Hi, spiritual adoptees. The moment I went live, I got a spam call. So that must be a good sign. Um, Hello, thanks for joining me. If you didn't know, this is my RV. Maybe Marnie the dog will make an appearance, but maybe not. I hope wherever you are today that you're having a good day and things are going well. It's Wednesday. I think is it the 8th? Yeah, it's Wednesday, February 8th today. And I've been organizing my research that I've been doing for this project, which is probably going to be my dissertation in my PhD program. I'm enrolled in, it's a mainly psychology program. And I go to Saybrook University, and the specialization is called Consciousness, Spirituality, and Integrated Health. And the moment I heard about that program, I was like, that sounds like me. And that was a little over 3 years ago. So I've been working on this project since I began that program. And so I have quite a few papers I've written on it. So I think it'd probably be the smoothest for me to just kind of not going to read a paper verbatim, but I will be reading from it and see how that goes. And I don't know, I'm just kind of doing this not on the fly, but I don't really know where I'm going to go with this exactly. Maybe I'll do this in parts. My idea is to do like an overarching initial video, and then after that, focus on individual pieces of this, like spirituality, adoptee identity, indigenous adoptees, like just different themes on the main subject. And hopefully this won't be, well, I don't think it's like terribly academically boring. So hopefully that'll be good. That's like, I'm putting this out there. I'm looking for feedback. And all right, thanks for checking this out. Let me get started. All right. In this paper, I wrote this last summer, and this was a chance for me to put together all of my adoptee research and look at a few things, mainly to look at, where is adoptee research, what has that been focused on in general, look at the concept of spirituality, like defining spirituality, and I'll talk more about that. In my program, I'm working towards building a case study, like a research project. So I'll get a little bit into that. Also, the concept of identity, since so core for adoptees. I really feel like that's the main piece about this is identity, and then looking at how spirituality fits with adoptee identities as well as everyone's identity. And again, I really think that this work goes far beyond just specifically for adoptees. I think that these are themes that are universal. In general, adoptees, orphans, is a universal principle that people relate to. As you can see, like, look at all of our stories and various in movies and storybooks and the Bible. It's so often that when they're a child, Harry Potter, the child loses their birth parents, their parents very early on, and begins their heroic journey, the hero's journey, and everyone. It's very interesting how people can relate to that. I have a book on that subject, so I'll be sharing that as well. It's just gonna, like anything here, and really any feedback's helpful. If there's anything that bring up that you think you'd like to know more about or talk about yourself, please please feel free to do your own lives on this channel. This is open. I'm very, my personality is like, it's just like want to share. I want to see where this can go. I'm devoting so much of my time to this. I really want to make sure that this is going to relate to people and that it's helpful. And see where this can go. I'm hoping, to do the dissertation, write a memoir. It would be so amazing if, and have drawings too. And if someday it could somehow be something to do with theater, that would be my dream. So thanks for joining me on my dream here. And I look forward to connecting with you about this subject. Now, that was a very long introduction. So, the psychology pieces that fit into this are Jungian, humanistic. Humanistic is, that's actually Saybrook University focuses on humanistic and existential principles. So talking about how like the progression of psychology and humanism kind of coming out of the mid-century and growing from there, really just being human-centered and not pathologizing the individual. So for adoptees, that's been really key in the adoptee journey, because before it was like, look, I'm going off my paper. This is good. I'm just talking. So, adoptees, for a very long time, it was pathologizing the adoptee, being like, how can we make adoptees fit into adoption, right? So kids were taken from their initial families, and I don't know so much about the history of foster care as much. Hopefully I'll get more into that. But I know that, in the adoptee literature, it's like, are adoptees maladjusted? That was like big questions, that was always being asked. Up until only a couple decades ago, that was like the main focus. And I kind of still feel like those are like the main themes in adoptee literature. It's just not as obvious. This is the main research coming out of adoptee research practices and institutes and main, universities that are doing that work. And that's something I'm getting more into, is looking at this and how problematic it is. So adoptee research has kind of changed, evolved to be more about the adoptee, looking at how each adoptee is different, how the problems of adoption in general, being removed from the family, and why. This is a huge topic. I'll definitely spend more time on that. I'll probably get into that right now. And then talking about how psychology has also evolved to include multiculturalism, feminism, and transformational psychology, or transpersonal psychology, which takes more, so looking at how we've taken culture into, there's a hummingbird right in front of me, taking culture more into respect, and, the interracial, international adoptions, and feminism is, I have a bunch of dissertations on adoptees who are really working from this kind of psycho-spiritual feminist perspective. There's a couple, not a bunch. I wish there was more. There's a few. I have like a handful that really work on this subject that I can draw from. But yeah, finding the research for this is interesting and piecing it together. So, and then I mentioned transformational, transpersonal psychology, which takes the soul and the spiritual journey as the main piece. So these are, like, you could say these are progressions in that psychology has taken, and they kind of weave together in different ways. So I'll just read and see where that goes. It is a long paper. It says this is 29 pages, but with the bibliography, I'm not going to go, I don't know how long I'll go. Maybe I'll go another 15 minutes. We'll see how it feels. All right, adoptee research has an avant-garde of adoptee literature, as well as progressive adoptee research institutions. So this is the thing, there's different places to get the research from. And I really notice that each place to get the research is very different information. And so that's been a question for me as a researcher. In the early 1990s, a few adoptee experts changed the focus from pathologizing adoptees to revealing true adoptee conditions and helping adoptees and their families succeed. And here I cite Silverstein and Kaplan. They started this, the 7 core issues of adoptees, and I think they started that in 1982. You have B.J. Lifton and Nancy Verrier, who have wrote in the early 90s, like the 2 known as the Adoptee Bibles. You may have seen them. Verrier wrote The Primal Wound, and I have Lifton's Coming Home to Self, and I'm forgetting right now her other books. These significant voices took up the issues in adoption which go beyond the adoptee to culture, academia, and policy. There is a call to serve children and families through policy changes, shifts in research, and getting better services for adoptees, including training psychologists. A major change of adoptee literature is that adoption itself is coming to be considered a trauma, which brings about a host of issues, no matter how loving the adoptive parents are. I won't list the citations the whole time, but this just to get a sense. So Verrier, Grovant et al., McInnes, Rosie and Maxon, Fair and Grovant, Wiley, and these are all within the last few years, mostly from 2019, which is interesting. Given adoption's changing landscape in the 20th century, racial and other social justice identities have come to the forefront, predominantly through a diverse group of women who are adoptee writers, therapists, and researchers. The changes in adoptee research and literature coincide with the evolutionary changes within the field of psychology over the past century, where we see 5 forces transform how psychology is done. And I mentioned those types of psychology before. The adoptee journey involves inward focus and a lot of learning, especially given the circumstances surrounding how adoption is portrayed in the West. Now you can, adoption has been a worldwide phenomenon throughout time, but how the West has really changed adoption, and this is mostly because of finances and privilege, and also we do get into race with who's been doing the adoption and the reasons why, and why they've been allowed to adopt kids in other countries. I arrived at my research question: how does adoptee spirituality develop and reconcile the adoptee wound, namely loss and identity, because of my own journey as an adoptee, with missing pieces and many life questions? To answer this question in my dissertation project, I will draw from my case study as well. This is me talking about what I'd like to do in my research. I will draw from my case study as well as literature on spirituality, adoptee research, and autobiography. This is back when I thought I was going to do a little more. I still might use the methodology of autobiography, but methodology is a whole other subject. There are a few psycho-spiritual dissertations by adoptees and mentions of spirituality in current adoptee texts, yet not in the research-based literature, so this is a gap in the research. I will look at adoption through the psychological fields, the various psychological fields, placing the meaning and significance of spirituality within the leading edge of psychology, connecting it to its integral part of the adoptee journey to show why it deserves attention in the adoptee field. Okay, so definitely the next piece is really talking about the adoptee research. So maybe I should just focus on that, and then I'll go into all other subjects in other videos. Adoptee research has changed in the past 4 decades in many ways. In 1982, Silverstein and Rosie Kaplan put out information that adoptees, and everyone in the adoptee triad, adoptees, birth, and adopted parents, face 7 core issues: loss, rejection, shame and guilt, grief, identity, intimacy, and mastering control. They would write more on the subject that decade. The adoptee triad has been a main topic, concerned about the adoptee, adopted parents, and the first or birth parents. The story of many mothers has been brought to light, as they often have been forced to give up their babies because of finances or due to the social mores of the time, the baby scoop, mid-century era. There has been a central and necessary shift of attention toward interracial and international adoptions, which have grown since this time, and the layers of challenges for these adoptees. Then, adoptee awareness vastly changed about 20 years ago through the seminal scholarship of two American authors which spoke directly to the adoptee: The Primal Wound, 93, and Journey of the Adopted Self, A Quest for Wholeness. That's Lifton's book from 95. That's not her first book. I forget if that was that. There was an earlier book, but I need to check that. These books challenged a world which was trying to make adoption successful for all involved in the adoptee triad, and from this point of view, adoptees were not grateful, happy, or generally adjusted enough in their adopted families. Adoptees reading these books found they were not alone in their misgivings, and also that maybe they should think about their initial relinquishment in adoption in other ways, basically as unnatural and traumatizing. There was also significance given to the biopsychosocial, spiritual aspects of the adoptee, with Verrier adding much about the baby-mother connection in the womb. As a mother to an adopted daughter and a biological daughter, The Primal Wound is a significant experience of a mother who understands the difference. Her second book has an up-to-date focus on the neurobiology of babies and the development of loss. And that was Verrier in 2003. I might get their books confused. Sometimes I switch those two authors, but the following period has many interesting research articles where the adoptee is at the center to understand their narrative experience and is more about their lifetime journey. And this has got to do with how research has been changing. There's been a shift from doing studies on people, like just studying people statistically, to really getting personal feedback and experiences to really find out truly what's going on. Instead of making more assumptions, you can, by doing narrative study, by doing or speaking from one's own experience, there's you can get a more truer look at what's going on versus looking at, like, from an outsider researcher's perspective, which may only be using like what's already been like an assumption, in a theory. So the search that adoptees think about and may do is a large theme, and adoptees have different reasons for searching, and there's so much that can happen in a search. Theorists have approached adoptee search as an attempt at identity formation, and there's a lot of citations, but I'm not going to do all of them. Often adoptees will focus on finding the birth mother, which helps to explain what they are seeking. And here's a quote: "Poignant experiences of loss and grief connected to adoption were recounted by the participants. There was a sense that parts of them were lost forever, their ghost selves, a self that they had lost the potential to become. This loss of self was compounded by a lack of recognition of the loss, which they felt was perpetuated by societal views of adoption and an absence of open communication within their family." So this is, really looking at the kind of standard adoption. I think I go into it about the problems with that, how the adoptee is, it's all kind of kept secret. Adoption, you're not you're kind of ignoring it in the family, and maybe even not even telling the kids or telling the outside world so much. And then I'll get into those. There's so many things here about this. So Penny et al. In 2007 delineates 5 phases of the adult adoptee experience of being adopted, and their experiences and feelings about searching for the birth parents, from adoptees who do not want to search in the middle to ones in the middle of initial contact, to the period well beyond finding and meeting one's genetic family. So, the search that the adoptees do is, so key to their life experience as an adoptee. It's, very particular. and just getting into the how the search and that wanting to search, and not every adoptee wants to search, and that's totally fine. And they might at all different times in their lives decide to do that, and what that means. So that research found that adoptees were happiest who did not search, and those who were far along on the search, with the most upset adoptees in the middle, who have just found their first families and learned more information, and their feelings about being adopted coincided with their overall satisfaction in life satisfaction. The searching theme is important to the adoptee journey and changes depending upon the kind of adoption. So this gets into, to me, this gets into actual issues of research, but the complications of it. But this is also very interesting that right away, so if you're like trying to figure all this stuff out, you're in the middle of this existential crisis, that's going to really change your life experience and overall life experience, to make it very challenging. So that also helps us maybe even understand adoptees a little more, and because if we see adoptees that are upset online, this is nothing to do, I'm never going to blame or shame any adoptees. I'm just looking at what's going on. It can be interesting of when you're in the middle of discovering a trauma or finding out more, that could be a very difficult part of your life. So that's good to acknowledge. Okay. Adoption itself has reformed, with newer adoption being about open adoption, where the birth parents stay in the life of the child and the adopted family. In decades past, adoption was about deleting and adding to family. But now with open adoption, it is a transformational experience. Keeping the relationship between child and birth mother remediates a good amount of the traumatic risks upon cognitive, emotional, physical, and relational development. Other helpful arrangements are the adoptee kinship network, which is the best option than the child going to a stranger's family. I guess the next best. These researchers are working to ensure the best outcomes for adoptees and how to strengthen research relationships for all involved in the adoption triad. And this is because adoption is taking as it's good that you can't not have adoption. There's, even if we in a perfect, like we wouldn't want in a perfect world to like have babies leave their families, like nobody would want that, but it's like taking consideration that there's going to at least be some experiences where there's just no way, that for that to happen. So ultimately it would be about making the most out of adoption in some respects too. And then the whole other piece is like, since adoption has been done in many incorrect ways for a while, or in very imperfect ways, how do we help the adults and younger people going through that? The transformation which is possible with intention building, relationships, and self-knowledge for everyone in the adoption triad are part of identity and can even be part of spirituality. These mindful actions are great for adults and show children how to be aware of themselves, their feelings, and places to grow. That wasn't so well written right there, but I'm presenting the beginning of this. Okay. This is a qualitative exploration which aims to inform therapists on how to help adoptees with increased self-awareness, self-acceptance, identity development, and having a voice. This was an article. This article shows different studies which show that adoptees may or not be as psychologically fit as non-adoptees. Many studies attempt to measure the psychology and pathology of adoptees, comparing them to non-adoptees. In their analysis, they found that adoptee research points out that person-centered counselor training may tap into the specific vulnerabilities of adopted people. These self-awareness, identity-gaining pathways were explored as the best healing practices for adoptees, and that adoptees should have access to these resources throughout their lifetime. And these articles are, there's a few of these, but as far as getting these out to the world, as far as, really getting this information out, that's why I want to work on this. It seems very very small. Those, though, right now, on social media, adoptees have a very big voice, and I'm not even on TikTok, and I probably should join soon. But I'm just hoping also to add to connect these dots in the research, and also get the research more out there too, and also maybe to help show our research good places for it to go. The Searching Adoptee-Centered Adoptee as individual focus is the new method for therapist training and understanding adoptees. Identity work is a major component of the adoptee journey, as adoptees face identity issues as they struggle to understand themselves without growing up with mirrors or ancestral knowledge. As adoptees get more involved in their, and also there's more to that, like the mirroring idea. I think if I don't write about that, that's important. And just even just have parents that they have similar things to, that can understand them more and help them grow their talents and strengths, or just get them more as people. In many of the popular definitions, spirituality. As adoptees get more involved in their search, they realize all the ways they have struggled to fit into their adoptee home. In many of popular definitions, spirituality is closely related to identity and one's sense of self. So that was my intuition, and then when I started doing the research on spirituality, like identity came right in, and then when I looked up identity, it was so easy to make that jump to spirituality. So that's what really fascinates me. There's many things. There's so many pieces to this, and places I want to go with what to do the research about, which would be very spiritual and these things, which I'm very excited about, like Stanislav Grof's work, breath work, this kind of transpersonal psychology, and spiritual tools. So that's what I'm really interested in. I feel like I should stop here. So I think that's good. I started at like 11:12, so that's like 30 minutes. So if you have made it this long, thank you. And I'll review this and see what would be good to go next. Honestly, this work keeps me busy. I've been 3 years full time, not only working on this in school, but mostly. And I'd say at least 2/3, maybe 3/4. I mean, I've been also learning research methodology, but then you talk about what your project's going to be, and a couple other things. But yeah, I'm so happy to finally be sharing this, and I'd love to hear your feedback and hear from you too on this page if you feel like doing so. So signing off for now, and have a great day.